Revenge with Karen.
"You're done here. Pack up after this presentation," Derek said, mid-sip of his organic cucumber spa water, like he was tossing out a moldy sandwich instead of a 12-year employee. He didn't say it in private. Not via HR. Not even in front of the regular team. No, he waited until the quarterly board meeting, full of suits and shareholders and finance guys who think empathy's a stock they can short. Dropped it right in the middle of my sentence about projected Q3 integration benchmarks, like a mic drop laced with cyanide. I blinked once. That was it. No tears, no gasps. No "how could you, Derek?" nonsense. Just one sharp inhale, the kind you take when you know the rest of the room is watching and you refuse to give them a show. Then I said, understood, clicked the remote, and advanced to the next slide about API dependencies like nothing happened. Let them squirm in their ergonomic chairs and wonder why I wasn't sobbing or storming out. I could feel them fidget. The CFO stopped taking notes. One of the newer board members, a guy who looked like he made his fortune selling golf simulator apps, coughed into his elbow like he was trying to pretend he hadn't just witnessed a professional hit. But no one said anything. Derek smirked, leaned back, crossed his arms like the alpha in a room that wasn't his to begin with. That smug look he always got when he thought he was winning. But here's the thing. When someone's too confident mid-battle, it usually means they didn't read the fine print. And Derek, he never read anything. That man once greenlit a company-wide lunch and learn about Excel macros because he thought VBA was a vitamin. When he smiled at me like a man who'd just fired a problem instead of detonated a trap, well, I smiled too. Internally, I kept talking, calmly, about the rollout timeline for our new enterprise integration suite, the platform our strategic partner was banking on. My voice didn't shake. I didn't look at Derek once, because this wasn't a war I was fighting with words. My weapon wasn't on the slides. It was buried 6 layers deep in a document he filed yesterday without realizing what he'd signed. By slide 11, I saw legal whispering near the door. One of the junior counsel had left the room. Maybe to get coffee, maybe to cross-check a clause, who knows? But let me pause for a second and say this. If you've made it this far into the story and haven't hit that subscribe button or liked the video yet, I promise it helps more than you know. Keeps this channel alive, so we can keep bringing you tales of boardroom betrayal, poetic justice, and the sweet sound of corporate karma hitting like a freight train. So, if you're enjoying this already, take 2 seconds, click like, hit subscribe, and let's keep going. You won't want to miss what happens next. Because you see, Derek thought today was about humiliating me. That firing me mid-presentation would send a message to the room about who held power. The real message was sitting inside a metadata signature on a document he rushed through legal 2 days ago. At 11:52 p.m., time-stamped, signed, and fully binding. He just didn't know it yet. He thought I was the kind of woman who'd cry in the break room or leave quietly with a cardboard box of desk plants and world's best mentor mugs. That's the problem with men like Derek. They don't understand quiet women. They think silence means weakness, confuse endurance with submission, and they never see it coming when the ones they walked over end up owning the floor beneath them. I wrapped up my part of the presentation. A few nods from board members. Someone clapped, awkwardly. Derek stood to thank me, using that oily HR voice he reserves for firings, reprimands, and LinkedIn videos about company culture. "Let's all give Margaret a round of applause for her years of service," he said, like I'd already left the building. I nodded again. Calm, quiet, but if you looked closely you might have seen it, the corners of my mouth twitching up, because service implies loyalty, and Derek was about to learn that the only thing I'd been loyal to was the truth, and maybe the clock, T-10 minutes, 12 years. That's how long I gave this place. 12 years of 6 a.m. logins and 11 p.m. Slack pings, picking up after other people's messes like I was the office janitor for adult incompetence. I was never the loudest voice in the room, but I was the one that made sure the wheels didn't fall off the damn car. And for 12 years, nobody noticed, until Derek started driving it like he owned the engine. When I first started, Derek was in sales, full of gum-smacking charisma and empty buzzwords. He couldn't tell an API from a KPI if you tattooed it on his laptop, but he had one skill, finding other people's hard work and stapling his name on it before it hit the executive floor. And I was the perfect mark. Quiet, efficient, too busy doing the actual work to bother with office politics. It started with little things. He'd copy my timelines into his status reports, forward my spreadsheets to clients with his signature. Once, I caught him pasting a whole section of my performance review into his own self-eval, that it was a template. I laughed then, thought it was just lazy, but lazy turned into calculated. By year 5, I was managing 3 major client verticals and training the new hires who would, within a year, be promoted to titles I wasn't even allowed to apply for. I coached them through technical snags, soothed panicked clients when Derek overpromised features we hadn't even built yet, quietly cleaned up every fire he left behind like some corporate arsonist's shadow. They called me dependable, reliable, the glue that holds us together. But glue doesn't get bonuses. Glue doesn't get plaques or corner offices or press quotes. Glue just dries invisible and cracks quietly under pressure. And I was cracking. The moment everything shifted came in the form of an Excel file. How poetic. Derek asked me to reframe the quarterly analytics, said the real numbers were a bit of a buzzkill for the partner firm. What he meant was, lie, bump up the engagement rate, pad the churn reduction, make us look better than we were. I said no, politely, professionally, but firm. 2 weeks later, I was cut from the partner strategy meetings. A project I'd led from scratch gone. I stopped getting invites to leadership syncs. Intern I mentored for 3 months was named innovation lead and given access to the executive dashboard I helped build. That's when I knew it wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't corporate oversight. It was a quiet purge, death by 1,000 realignments. The same script I'd seen play out around me for years, except this time, I was the one being erased. I remember sitting in my car one night in the office parking lot, engine off, hands on the wheel. Everyone else had left. The cleaning crew was just pulling in, and I sat there staring at the glass building I'd poured a decade of my life into, wondering what I was doing, wondering if I was crazy to think I deserved better, wondering why it took betrayal for me to see how little they thought of me. But the thing about being the quiet one is, people forget you're watching. They forget you hear things, that you remember details, that while they're bluffing, you're documenting. I started building my own little folder. Just a few things at first: timesheets, Slack logs, approval chains, internal memos with his name on top and my work beneath. Then came the project outlines, the IP histories, the license structures, all the things Derek didn't understand and never bothered to learn because he assumed I'd always be there to clean up after him. And then one day, I wasn't. I stopped bringing in cookies for the team. I stopped volunteering for the fun committee. I let the fire burn when Derek overpromised features we hadn't scoped. Let him sweat, let him falter, and I watched, quiet, focused. That's when the idea hit me. A clause, one line, tucked into a transition agreement. A tiny thread in a long document no one would bother to read except me. I didn't want revenge. I wanted recognition. But in a place like this, they're the same thing. It started with a blank LLC filing form and a $125 payment. The name I chose was meaningless, just 3 corporate-sounding syllables strung together like the rest of the beige wallpaper in this industry. No one pays attention to LLC names. That's the point. You give them something they can skim past. 2 weeks ago, I took a personal day, told HR I had a medical appointment, which wasn't entirely a lie. Had to get something removed, the final trace of fear that they'd ever value me for anything more than cleanup duty. I drove to a notary tucked behind a strip mall sandwich shop and filed the paperwork. Margaret Elaine West Consulting, LLC. Official. Registered. Fully mine. No ties to the company. No red flags. Just another boutique consulting firm born from mid-career burnout. Back at my desk the next day, I pulled up the partner integration agreement, one I'd practically written in my sleep while Derek supervised from a wine bar in Napa. I'd spent months structuring it, testing its viability, coordinating with the client's dev leads, while Derek sent emojis from airport lounges. The deal was our golden goose, a 5-year exclusive to deploy our enterprise platform across their infrastructure. High stakes, high payout, high visibility. The kind of thing companies pivot around. I inserted a clause. Just one. Section 17B. In the event of any transfer or compliance transition, all active license authority for core product functionality, Platform X, shall vest temporarily in the consulting entity designated by the lead architect to ensure product continuity during onboarding. Sounds boring, right? Sounds like legalese. Sounds like exactly the kind of thing Derek would pretend to understand, and then sign just to seem decisive. 'Cause it was. The lead architect, me, designated consulting entity, my LLC, product continuity. That's corporate speak for you can't legally use this without me. I buried it between the transition flowchart and a line item export from Jira. Printed it, watermarked it, compiled it into the master agreement packet, and dropped it in Derek's digital lap under the subject line. Final partner deliverables need EOD sign-off. Replied in 3 minutes flat. Looks good. Approving now. Of course it did. He wanted the credit, and to get credit you have to be first. That's Derek's whole playbook. Move fast, smile big, let the details burn behind you like a lit match in a dry forest. He didn't even open the attachment. Just forwarded it to legal with the note, greenlit by Margaret. Proceed. Timestamp, 11:52 p.m., Friday night. He thought I was still covering for him. Still loyal, still reliable. What he didn't realize was that I'd stopped being reliable the moment he made it clear I was disposable. Legal processed the package on Monday. They filed it, stamped it, and began prepping the official transfer docs with the partner firm. I watched the process unfold in the shared approval software we all used, watched the digital cogs turn without ever touching them. By Tuesday, it was done. Signed, logged, and most importantly, auditable. Metadata on that document was a thing of beauty. My name as drafter, my LLC as holder, Derek's e-signature as authorizing exec. No red flags, no conflict, just seamless authorization. The trap had been set. I didn't celebrate. There was nothing to toast yet. The deal wouldn't go live for another week, but I slept a little better that night. Not because I'd outmaneuvered Derek, but because for once, my name was on something that mattered. And I hadn't begged, or whined, or kissed a single ass to get there. The next morning, I brought in donuts. The team thought I was being generous. Derek made some joke about how I always know when morale's low. I smiled and said, "You've got no idea." Then I went back to my desk, opened my email, and began writing a separate letter, one I would send only if I needed to. A cease-use notification. Formal, legal, and timed to trigger exactly 1 hour after the deal went live. Not vindictive, not petty, just preventative. After all, if a company decides to fire the person holding the key to the vault, someone should probably tell them the lock's about to change. It started with a smile that didn't reach the eyes. HR used to greet me like a regular, first name, quick jokes, sometimes even asking if I'd review onboarding docs they were struggling with. But after Derek's performance feedback synced the week prior, turned into statues with keyboards, flat tones, no eye contact. I asked about the promotion I was told was a sure thing back in Q2, the one I'd quietly trained 2 juniors to prepare for so I could step into a strategy role. I even had the roadmap drafted. That's on hold pending departmental restructuring, they said, with all the warmth of a vending machine eating your dollar. I knew what that meant. I didn't scream, didn't cry. I nodded and said, "Thanks for the update," then walked straight back to my desk and printed the original email from Derek. "Once the rollout's locked, we'll move you into a lead architect role. You've more than earned it," timestamped. Saved, screenshot, duplicated. By Wednesday, my mentee Tyler stopped chatting with me altogether. Not a single hey, no more dropping by to double-check how to handle the partner's sandbox login issues, nothing. Just radio silence and guilty glances. I caught him exiting Derek's office once with a face like someone who'd just been handed a stolen crown. Later, I found out he'd been promoted to Director of Emerging Systems, my title with an extra word. He'd been here 11 months. Derek never mentioned it. I found out when I got locked out of the Jenkins dashboard and had to ask IT why my access was revoked. They said, "Oh, thought you'd transitioned off that environment." Tyler's the owner now. Same Tyler who didn't know how to read system logs 6 months ago. I checked the admin panel. All my roles gone. Project write permissions revoked. My name stripped from the core repository as a contributor. Quietly, without warning, without any documentation. It was a digital ghosting. That night I stayed late, long after the overhead lights dimmed and the building turned into its eerie after-hours version, soft HVAC hum, ocean-detecting lights twitching in the corners. I pulled every access log I still had, every instance of Derek changing contributor roles, every Slack message where I provided strategic support or operational direction. I archived it all into a private drive, printed critical threads, used my own printer paper and toner. I wasn't about to let them ding me for misuse of company resources too. It was around then the rumors started floating back to me. No Margaret's kind of intense, right? She's smart, but not exactly team first. I think she's more tactical than strategic. Every time someone repeated a version of it to me, they always prefaced it with, "Don't shoot the messenger." I never did. I just smiled and added a line to the document I was building. Reputation sabotage initiated, approx. 7 days post-licensing approval. Source, Derek or aligned parties. Impact radius, rising. I wasn't naive. I knew what they were doing. This wasn't incompetence, it was preparation. Derek wanted to clear the field before the board presentation. He knew the partner deal was high profile. He wanted me off the radar, so when he took credit for the rollout, no one would ask why my name wasn't on it. He was trying to kill the witness before the trial. But I'd seen enough coups to know one thing: you never strike without covering your trail. And Derek, for all his smug corporate cosplay, had the operational memory of a boiled potato. He didn't know I'd been saving everything for months. Didn't know I'd caught the draft of an internal memo where he wrote, "Transition Margaret to a redundancy plan will frame as resource optimization." Didn't know I'd forwarded that memo to my personal email under the name birthday coupon txt. Didn't know I'd spent the past 3 weekends meeting with a lawyer named Cynthia, who used to work for our partner firm's compliance division. She knew all the red tape. She even helped me refine the wording in Section 17B. Derek thought I was licking wounds. I was loading ammunition. Every denied access, every erased comment from Confluence, every accidental removal of my credentials, documented. Data equivalent of planting little gasoline trails through the entire building. I wasn't planning a fight. I was planning a burn. Slow, legal, unstoppable. And it was almost time to light the match. The conference room smelled like expensive cologne, old coffee, and tension. Everyone had a little performative fatigue on their faces, PowerPoint fatigue, fake smile fatigue, trying to look interested in metrics fatigue. But as I clicked through the final slide, detailing our cross-platform migration benchmarks and a 2-year projected ROI at 18.4%, something shifted. They were listening now. The chair of the board, a silver ponytailed venture guy named Hal, actually leaned forward. One of the junior investors, a guy who once asked me if the cloud was a physical server he could visit, nodded like he finally understood where the revenue would come from. Even the usually glazed-over head of finance tapped a note into her tablet. The plan was airtight, strategic, scalable, and most of all, profitable. I paused, let the silence breathe. Then I clicked to the final slide, simple, clean, with the words, "Phase 1 begins Q3, we're ready." And I meant that in more ways than one. A few polite claps scattered the room, the kind that say we want to look engaged without going too far. Hal cleared his throat, nodded to me like I'd just served him a decent whiskey, and then turned toward Derek. Derek stood up, smiling like a man who just won a raffle with someone else's ticket. "Let's all take a moment to appreciate Margaret's hard work on this," he said, his voice full of that fake, rich molasses he uses when he wants to sound gracious. "Her service to the company has been invaluable. Truly." I didn't flinch. Service. I was some kind of retiring stewardess, getting a commemorative pin and a buffet lunch. Derek continued, "The rollout she outlined is a testament to our forward-thinking culture, and with today's final legal signatures, we'll anchor our position in the next-gen enterprise space." He said "our" like he built it. Like he'd written the damn thing on a cocktail napkin while whispering sweet nothings to a venture capitalist, gestured toward the legal team sitting near the side of the room. 3 of them, 2 paralegals, and Mitchell, our in-house counsel. Mitchell looked about as excited as a man reading the back of a cereal box. Just another routine filing for him. He opened his laptop, nodded to the assistant beside him, and quietly began processing the final agreement package, the same one Derek had authorized with his signature a week earlier, same one containing Section 17B. I watched Mitchell click through folders, verifying their data and preparing the transfer forms to go live. No alarms, no errors, just smooth, automatic compliance. I knew the moment it triggered. I saw it in the confirmation window that popped up briefly on his screen. Document 3492B Partner Transition Agreement, legal transfer initiated. Right on schedule. I sat still, hands folded over the edge of the table, the picture of grace and exit-level humility. The woman who knew her place. The woman who had just been publicly thanked and quietly erased. The woman they assumed would fade out with a box of pens and a security escort. But inside, my blood had gone cold. Not with fear, with focus. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't shaking. I felt eerily calm, like a pilot who's already prepared for turbulence, because she charted the storm herself. Derek rambled on for another few minutes, thanking the partner firm, gesturing vaguely at a projected slide showing a mocked-up dashboard UI I personally designed. Then he opened the floor for questions. No one had any. Everyone assumed the hard part was over. He turned to me and said, "Margaret, if you don't mind stepping out so the board can discuss transition planning." There it was, the final shove. I stood up slowly, nodded again, and said, "Of course. Let me know if I can provide any clarification." He grinned, already forgetting I existed. I walked to the door, heels clicking softly on the polished floor. As I stepped out into the hallway, Mitchell glanced up from his screen. His brow furrowed just slightly. A flicker. Something had caught his eye. I didn't stop walking, didn't look back. I just kept moving toward my desk, toward the box they expected me to pack, or the final email I'd queued up to send once the agreement triggered. Subject line: Ownership confirmation. Attachments: timestamped authorizations, license records, legal definitions of transitional custodianship. A copy of Section 17B highlighted. And a note at the bottom. Per Clause 27C, the license cannot be modified or reassigned without consent from the designated entity. Please direct all usage inquiries to Margaret Elaine West Consulting, LLC. My phone buzzed in my pocket. One word from Cynthia, my lawyer, clocks ticking. The second the boardroom door clicked shut behind me, I walked, not rushed, walked, to the break room like I was just grabbing a cup of coffee. Nobody looked twice. To them, I was already a ghost, fired in all but paperwork. A soon-to-be former employee collecting dignity crumbs on my way out. They didn't see was the adrenaline humming beneath my skin like an exposed wire. I skipped the break room. Instead, I took the back stairs 2 floors down to the unoccupied operations office Derek had once claimed was too isolated for his open-door leadership style. I used to work down here before they decided I was more effective as a mentor upstairs, which is code for we want your brains, but not your presence. Lucky for me, the old badge still worked. I shut the door, locked it, and opened my personal laptop. Not the company-issued one. That one was in sleep mode back at my desk, probably being flagged for IT review before long. No, this machine was clean. Offline, old but dependable. Inside, I opened a folder labeled Event Horizon. It contained everything: the LLC registration, the original architectural schematics with my author signature, IP history logs showing first use, proprietary sequence models, and back-end diagnostic metadata. All linked to me. Not the company, not Derek, not even the partner firm, me. I cross-referenced the documents again, not because I doubted, but because paranoia is just another word for survival at this level. Then I opened Signal and sent a message to Lyle, the integration lead at our partner firm. We'd worked together for months in silence, building trust through late-night bug hunts, and let's pretend Derek didn't say that cleanup calls. I didn't explain everything, just asked a single question. Does the contract fall apart if Platform X's license is disputed? He replied in under a minute. If the license isn't clear, our legal will pause execution. Clause 11.3, you knew that, I did, but I needed to hear it from him. Then I opened the official license registry. The time-stamped, notarized, filed record linking Platform X's active IP license to Margaret Elaine West Consulting, LLC. Confirmed, still valid, still mine, no challenge submitted. I was the only one who could authorize its commercial use or deny it. That's when I drafted the cease use notification. Not a tantrum, not a threat. Just a standard, legal template, a precise statement of rights. To whom it may concern, please be advised that as of noon tomorrow, all external use of Platform X under the current agreement will be suspended pending IP authorization review. No license activity shall proceed until verified by the designated legal representative of MEW Consulting, LLC. I included the relevant sections, the filing number, my attorney's contact info, and just one final line: this is not punitive. It is procedural. Please govern yourselves accordingly. I scheduled it to send at exactly 11:59 a.m. the next day, just 1 minute before the board would finalize the public rollout announcement. That's when Derek would realize he'd built his launch party on a sinkhole, that his big boardroom coupe was a noose he'd tied with my documents. I closed the laptop, breathed in, out, once. I wasn't shaking anymore. I wasn't sad. The ache of betrayal had calcified into something else. Not rage, just readiness. Kind of cold, steady awareness you get when you stop waiting for someone to save you and realize you're the goddamn cavalry. I stood up, straightened my blazer, wiped a tiny smudge from my glasses, then walked out of the office like I'd just dropped off some paperwork. Nothing to see here. Back at my desk, I saw someone had left a cardboard box near my monitor. Not a word, no note, just the silent choreography of removal. Derek thought this was the finale, had no idea the curtain hadn't even gone up yet. It began with a pause. Not the dramatic kind with gasps and wide eyes. No, this one was quiet. Technical. The kind only lawyers and engineers notice. Mitchell, the senior counsel, had flagged something odd when finalizing the implementation packet, so he passed it to a junior associate, Danielle, fresh out of Columbia Law and still nervous enough to triple-check footnotes. She sat there for 20 silent seconds, staring at her screen like it just insulted her. Mitchell, still half scrolling through Slack messages on his phone, finally looked over and asked, "Something wrong?" Danielle didn't answer right away. Then finally, the license registry ID, it doesn't match the internal control database. It's showing external custodianship. Do we have a countersign? Mitchell frowned. Pull the signature chain. She did. And that's when the first domino fell. Hallway outside the boardroom wasn't chaos, not yet, but the mood had shifted. Subtle changes, doors left ajar, footsteps faster than they needed to be, hushed voices huddled too close to copier machines. I saw it happen from my desk, where I sat calmly folding up my stapler, binder clips, and the stress ball shaped like a llama that Tyler gave me last Christmas, back when he still had a soul. My coat was slung over the side of the box, single framed photo of my dog, just enough to make it look like I was going out quietly. My Slack notifications were dead. My email login had been throttled. No farewell message had been sent on my behalf. It was the digital equivalent of being buried without a headstone. And yet I hummed, softly, something wordless and slow. It calmed me, confused my colleagues. A few peeked at me as they passed. Maybe they thought I'd snapped. Let them. At exactly 11:47 a.m., I opened my personal inbox and hit send on a message I'd queued the night before. 2. Legal at AxonBridgePartners.com, Mitchell Corp at Internal, Derek Coleman at Internal, CC. Exec Board at Internal, Compliance at Internal, Subject. Ownership confirmation, body. Per our previous correspondence, please find attached the updated documentation confirming ownership of Platform X under the licensee entity MEW Consulting, LLC. All historical authorizations, including IP control, active repository credentials, and partner compliance certs, are timestamped and enclosed. If any further verification is required, my counsel Cynthia Jung, CC'd, will provide clarity. For record, as of April 12, 9:42 p.m., sole software license authorization on file reflects my entity. This filing supersedes prior internal draft iterations. Kindly confirm receipt. Attachments. License filing MEW PDF, IP timestamp log CSV, Section 17B highlighted PDF, authorization chain export MSG, transition memo revised docx. There was no need for threats. The documents did the talking. I saw the first legal assistant walk briskly past my cubicle. 2 minutes later, another followed, whispering something sharp into his phone as he disappeared into the stairwell. Mitchell himself appeared in the corridor outside Derek's office, lips pressed so thin they vanished into his face. He glanced in my direction, then away, as if the act of making eye contact might ignite something. Derek still didn't know. I imagined him in the boardroom, confident and bloated with his own performance, doing what he always did, smiling for attention while someone else did the math behind the scenes. Mitchell stepped in and asked to borrow the AV panel remote. Innocent, casual, except nothing about legal ever touched AV. Not unless something was going to be displayed or recorded. Danielle pulled out her laptop. I knew the file she was looking at, my license filing. It had a unique signature hash embedded in the metadata. Couldn't be altered, not without triggering a corruption alert. 10 more minutes and they'd be in too deep. 5 more and they'd realize they had no way out that didn't involve me. Back at my desk, I gently placed the framed photo on top of my coat in the box. The inbox pinged with a single-line reply from Cynthia. Confirmed. Let me know when they panic. I closed my laptop and waited 10 minutes. That's how long it took for the storm to hit. Inside the boardroom, Derek was riding high, still gloating over the partner agreement like he'd carved it out of granite with his bare hands. He was probably talking about next steps and scaling architecture with the confidence of a man who thinks buzzwords can plug leaks in a dam. Someone even poured him sparkling water in a crystal glass. Real king of the hill energy. Until legal walked in. They didn't knock. They didn't wait. Burst through the doors like the fire department responding to a gas leak. Mitchell was pale, not tired pale, courtroom verdict pale. Danielle followed behind him, clutching her laptop like it was radioactive. "Ma'am," Mitchell said, voice just one octave too high, "we need to call security." Now, you could hear the breath suck out of the room. The board chair stood halfway, confused. "Security? What the hell's going on?" Mitchell didn't look at him. He turned to Derek. "At center, the document you filed yesterday, the final execution file for the partner license agreement. It's in her name." Derek blinked. "Whose name?" Mitchell didn't flinch. "Her name. Margaret Elaine West." The IP transfer clause was embedded in the integration packet. Platform X is licensed to MEW Consulting LLC. She holds legal custodianship, which you signed off on. The silence that followed could have cracked bone. One of the investors audibly said, "Jesus Christ." Another whispered, "That can't be right." Danielle spun her laptop toward the board chair and highlighted the signature chain. Metadata lit up like a Christmas tree. Author M. West, reviewer D. Coleman. Sign-off timestamp 11:52 p.m. 1 week prior. Clear as crystal. Sealed as a tomb. "Is this a joke?" Derek asked, face reddening fast. "Does this look like a joke?" Mitchell snapped. Derek turned to the board chair. "I was told this was pre-approved. Didn't read every line." "Well, that's apparent," the chair muttered. Mitchell kept going. "Due to custodial redirection, the license authority does not reside with Axon Bridge. All executions are invalid without the consent of the holding entity, which is currently initiating a cease-use protocol effective noon today." The chair looked at Derek like he'd grown antlers. "You mean to tell me," he said slowly, "we just announced a partner rollout for software we don't own?" In the far back corner, the AV screen flickered. An email projected quietly onto the display, the one I'd sent not 30 minutes earlier. Subject, ownership confirmation. The chair turned, read it in full silence, and exhaled like he was trying not to vomit. Mitchell nodded toward it. "There's your proof. She filed every document legally. Our system logged it. And your VP," he said, gesturing at Derek with all the grace of a death sentence, "authorized it without question." That's when Derek's mouth finally opened, but no words came out, just air, like someone had sucked the power from his lungs. And that's when I stepped into the room. Box in my hands, coat folded neatly on top. I didn't rush. I didn't make eye contact with anyone but Mitchell, who nodded once, like we were closing a loop that had started months ago. I set the box gently on the table, pulled out a single envelope, placed it in front of the chair. Printed copy of the license registry, notarized and timestamped. Then I looked at Derek, not angrily, not even smugly, just calm, and said, as I mentioned earlier, this rollout couldn't happen without full compliance. He flinched. The chair pinched the bridge of his nose like he was trying to push his soul back into his body. One of the investors laughed, short, disbelieving. "She warned you. You were so busy staging your little power play, didn't even check your own paperwork." Derek finally found his voice. "This is insubordination." "Sabotage?" "No," I said, still not raising my voice. "This is paperwork." Another board member asked quietly, "Can we still execute the deal if she walks?" Mitchell shook his head. "Not legally, and definitely not publicly." Everyone turned toward me. I didn't say a word, because they already knew the answer. The chair slammed his palm on the table, not hard enough to break decorum, but enough to jolt everyone out of their collective silence. "Derek," he said, voice razor flat, "explain to this board how you approved a multimillion-dollar contract assigning the core product license to a third-party entity, without review, without discussion, and without counsel." Derek's mouth opened and closed like a malfunctioning Pez dispenser. His jaw twitched. He looked around for someone to save him, Mitchell, the chair, even me. The air had changed. No more smugness. No more grins. His voice, when it came, was a dry cough trying to pass as confidence. I assumed the docs were standard. Margaret's team always handles the compliance material. It came through late. I had trust in her operational accuracy. The chair blinked slowly. "So you're saying you trusted the person you were actively pushing out?" Derek swallowed. "That's not what I meant." I stepped forward, opened my folder, placed a printed packet in front of the chair. 22 pages. Clean, Ordered, time-stamped. Here's the email where I submitted the packet, I said, flipping pages slowly. Here's Derek's reply, looks good, approving now. Time-stamped, 11:52 p.m., Friday. Here's the Slack ping confirming receipt from legal. And here's the document ID trail showing that the file went unaltered, signed, and pushed to execution Monday morning. I turned to Danielle. Do you like to cross-reference those with your system logs? She nodded, already checking. The AV screen blinked to life, a familiar interface. The partner firm's legal team had joined via secure link. Lyle, their integration lead, sat beside their general counsel, a woman named Morgan who looked like she could kill a hostile takeover with just her eyebrows. Morgan leaned toward the camera. To clarify, she said, received confirmation this morning that MEW Consulting LLC holds the active license for Platform X. According to our agreement, we cannot proceed with deployment unless that license is validated and authorized by the registered custodian. Derek jumped in. There has to be a workaround. I'm sure we can, no, Morgan said, flat. We will proceed, but only with the license holder. That is non-negotiable. The board erupted into motion. Side glances, hushed curses. Someone from finance muttered, "You've got to be kidding me." The chair held up a hand. This board, he said, is hereby calling an emergency vote. Item 1, the immediate suspension of Vice President Derek Coleman, pending internal investigation and legal review. Someone shouted seconded before he finished the sentence. All hands rose, unanimous. Derek stood frozen, face flushed, breathing shallow. His mouth twitched open, but the words refused to come. The chair turned to me. Margaret, given your unique position in this matter, what would it take to continue the rollout uninterrupted? I didn't answer right away. I walked slowly to the front of the room, past Derek, past the screen, past the board members who hadn't met my eye in years. I placed both hands on the table. Let the silence build, just long enough. Then I looked straight at the chair and said, first, you call off the separation paperwork. Second, I want full reinstatement with operational autonomy over the rollout division. Third, the junior team I trained, they report to me now. And finally, I turned to Derek, who was sweating through his collar. I want a formal apology, in writing, circulated internally and externally. Same format you used when you thanked me for my service. The chair nodded. Done. Derek tried to protest, but the room had already moved on. Even the investors, those detached, smirking money men, were silent now. I turned to pick up my box, but halfway through, I paused, looked back at Derek. You said I was done, I said softly. Then I smiled, cool and unshakable. I'm just getting started. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.